The storm came down like God had split a flour sack over Devil's anvil and meant to bury every living thing under it. Silas Thorne stood in the barn door with a lantern in one hand and a coil of rope in the other. Snow struck his coat hard enough to sting through wool. The wind shoved at the hinges till the whole barn groaned like an old man with bad bones. He counted his stock by lantern light: 8 horses, 12 milk cows, 1 mean red bull that kept kicking the stall boards. "All right," Silas muttered. "You live, I live." The scar on his face pulled tight when the cold got into it. It ran from his temple to the corner of his mouth, pale and raised as if some knife had tried to split him open and left its signature. Folks in town stopped looking at it after a while. Then they started looking at the floor. Silas preferred that. He barred the barn, crossed the yard with his head down, and felt the snow bite through the seams of his gloves. Beyond the fence, the valley had vanished. No creek, no road, no ridgeline, just white fury and the black teeth of the rocks above the house. Inside, the fire cracked in the stone hearth. Pine pitch snapped and threw sparks against the iron screen. Coffee boiled thick on the stove, black as fence tar. Silas set his rifle by the door, shrugged off his coat, and stood still. The house answered with nothing. No child coughing from the back room. No woman humming while she cut bread. No small feet hitting the floorboards before dawn. He poured coffee into a tin cup and drank it standing. Then the gate bell rang. Silas did not move. The bell rang again, weak this time, one dull clank swallowed by wind. He crossed to the window and wiped frost from the glass with his sleeve. At first he saw only snow driving sideways, then a shape near the gate. Small, bent over. One hand still caught in the rope. Silas grabbed his coat and rifle. By the time he reached the gate, the shape had fallen. It was a woman. Her dress was torn at the hem and stiff with ice. Her bonnet hung down her back by one ribbon. One glove was gone. The bare hand under it had blood in the cracks of the knuckles frozen dark along the skin. Silas crouched. "Ma'am." Her eyes opened just enough to catch lantern light. Gray eyes. Not soft, not empty. Like she had been keeping hold of herself by the teeth. Her lips moved. He bent closer. "Don't let him take me." Then her head dropped against his arm. Silas looked toward the road. There was no road now, only blowing white and the sound of the storm beating the world flat. He should have left her in the shed. He should have waited till morning. He should have kept his door shut, same as he had kept it for 7 years. Instead, he slid one arm beneath her knees, the other behind her shoulders, and lifted her clear out of the snow. She weighed near nothing. Inside, he laid her by the hearth on the braided rug. He stripped off her frozen shawl, wrapped her in 2 wool blankets, and tucked hot stones near her feet. Her blood marked the edge of one blanket in small brown streaks. Something slipped from her bodice and landed on the floor. A folded paper. Silas picked it up. The ink had run from melted snow, but he could still make out a name. Clara Vance. Below it, another line. Marriage agreement. His jaw set. He looked back at her. Her lashes shook. Her fingers curled against the blanket, like they were holding a rope that was no longer there. Near midnight, she woke with a hard breath and tried to sit up. Silas caught her shoulder. "Easy." She jerked away so fast the blanket slipped. He stepped back and showed both hands. "You're on Thornland. Nobody's in here but me." Her eyes moved to the rifle by the door, then to the paper on the table. "You read it enough." Her throat worked before she spoke. "My uncle signed me over for a debt. Said a husband was waiting west of the pass." I ran before I saw his face. Silas laid another stick on the fire. The room filled with pine smoke and coffee steam. "You can stay till the snow breaks." Her mouth tightened. "And after you go." She looked at him over the blanket. The fire put gold along her cheekbones, but her hands still shook under the wool. I got nowhere. Silas turned his cup in his hand. The tin clicked once against his ring finger. Neither does a stray calf, but I don't bring it to church. She looked down at her cracked knuckles and said nothing. Silas took the marriage paper, set it on the table, and weighted it with the coffee pot. Sleep. Doors bolted. He crossed to the small desk by the window, took up a notice he had read 30 times that day, and set it beneath an old survey map. Clara watched from the hearth through half-lowered eyes. When Silas turned his back, she pushed herself up on one elbow. The paper on the desk showed a red territorial seal. Her face went still. She reached into the blanket and pulled out her own ruined contract. The seal at the bottom, smudged but sharp at the edge, carried the same broken wing eagle. Same false stamp. Same crooked mark in the wax. Outside, the wind slammed the shutters so hard, the lamp flame bent sideways. Clara stared from one paper to the other, and the blood left her fingers as she understood the same hand had marked them both. By morning, the windows were milk-white with ice. Silas opened the door an inch. The storm shoved snow across the floorboards. He shut it with his shoulder and dropped the bar back in place. Clara sat by the hearth, one blanket around her shoulders, both hands wrapped about a tin cup. Every time the wind struck the north wall, her eyes cut to the door. No tracks left, Silas said. She looked up. Even if somebody followed, snow ate the road. Her fingers tightened on the cup. Snow buries good men too. Silas said nothing. For 3 days, Devil's Anvil was 4 walls, a roof, and the fire between them. Wind clawed at the cabin. Smoke pushed back down the chimney when the gusts turned wrong. At night, frost grew inside the window seams, little white teeth shining in firelight. Clara found flour in a crock starter in a jar and salt in a paper twist. By noon, sourdough rose beside the stove. By dusk, bread sat on the table with a crust dark enough to crack under Silas's knife. He cut 2 pieces and set the larger one by her plate. She noticed. He pretended not to. The next day, she took his torn coat from the peg. The left sleeve had ripped near the elbow, and the lining hung loose where work and weather had chewed it thin. She threaded a needle by firelight. Her hands still bore scabbed lines, but they moved clean and sure. "That ain't yours to fix," Silas said from the desk. "It ain't fit to wear. It keeps weather out. Half of it." His scar pulled tight. He bent back over his papers. The desk was a graveyard of maps. Old plats, tax notices, survey scraps, county lines inked in brown creek bends marked by a hand long dead. One sheet lay crushed near the stove where he had thrown it and missed the flames. Clara waited until he went through the snow tunnel to check the stock. Then she lifted the crushed map. At first it looked like plain boundary work. Section marks, range lines, a creek named Mercy Run. But the ink along the eastern meridian sat too dark, too fresh. She held the paper close to the lamp. Someone had scraped it thin and drawn the line again. She took up another map, then another. The same small crime hid in each one. The door opened. Silas came in with snow on his hat brim and a feed sack over one shoulder. His eyes went to the map in her hands. "Put that down. This line is wrong. Put it down. They moved your meridian." Silas dropped the feed sack. Grain dust rose between them. "You know survey work. My father drew rail maps before the fever took him. I copied township plats in Boston till my uncle sold his name and mine with it. Boston women don't walk into storms carrying marriage papers. No. They get pushed." The fire snapped. A knot of pine burst and sent sparks up the chimney. Clara spread 3 maps on the table. "Your tax notice is built on bad ground. If this meridian sits where Finch claims Mercy Run crosses uphill through stone. Water does not climb Mr. Thorne." Silas stared at the paper, then at the notice beneath the coffee pot. She tapped the false seal. "Same mark as mine. Broken wing in the eagle. Territorial seals don't break the same way twice." His jaw moved once, like he had bitten down on a nail. "What do they want?" he asked. Clara traced the valley floor with one reddened finger. "Not the house. Not your cattle. Something under it. Water, most like. A deep spring. Maybe mineral water. Enough to make dry land worth killing for." Silas's hand settled flat on the table. The knuckles went pale. Before either of them spoke again, the window behind Clara cracked like a rifle shot. A lead ball tore through the glass, struck the oil lamp, and blew fire and black oil across the wall. Silas threw himself over Clara as the room went dead dark. Silas hit the floor with Clara beneath him and glass raining over his back. For one breath, there was only the hiss of lamp oil on the wall and the sound of her mouth close to his coat, taking air too fast. "Stay down," he said. Another shot punched the doorpost. Splinters struck the hearthstone. Silas crawled to the rifle. He slid along the floor, shoulder brushing cold ash, and put the barrel through the broken pane. Outside, shapes moved in the white. "Thorne," a man called. "You got paper to sign." Silas knew that voice. Smooth as butter left too long in the sun. Bartholomew Finch. The storm had eased to a hard falling snow. 5 riders sat beyond the fence, coats white at the shoulders, rifles held low but ready. Finch sat in the middle on a black gelding city hat pulled down face clean as a preacher's plate. Silas opened the door with the rifle in hand. "You're early," he said. Finch smiled. "Law don't wait on weather. Law gave me till Monday." Law changed. One rider laughed through his scarf. Clara stood behind Silas, wrapped in his mended coat, now the sleeve too long over one hand. Her eyes moved over the men, the horses, the rifles, then to the satchel tied behind Finch's saddle. Finch saw her. "Well now," he said, "there's the little runaway bride." Silas's fingers tightened on the rifle stock. Finch drew folded papers from his coat. "By order of the Territorial Land Office, this ranch is under seizure for tax delinquency, boundary fraud, and refusal of lawful survey. You sign transfer. You walk away with your horse and your hide." Silas did not answer. Finch's gaze slid to Clara. "Refuse and I take the house with the woman inside it." The old sickness came into Silas's face. His mouth went flat. His eyes drifted past Finch, past the riders, to somewhere with summer heat, cholera wagons, and 3 pine boxes under a sheet. Clara saw his rifle lower by 1 inch, then another. Silas reached for the paper. "No," Clara said. No one moved. She stepped around him and stood in the doorway, bare head in the snow, gray eyes fixed on Finch. "This seizure is false." Finch chuckled. "Girl, go warm yourself." She took the papers from Silas's hand before he could stop her. Her fingers shook once, then held steady. Homestead entry requires 5 years residence, proven improvement, and lawful survey by fixed section corner. Mr. Thorne has house barns, stock ditch work, and creek use marked on the original plat. Finch's smile thinned. Clara pointed to the lower line. "You moved the eastern meridian 42 chains west. But you forgot the creek grade." One rider leaned forward. "What's she saying?" "She's saying your boss can't count," Clara said. The yard went still. Finch's cheek jumped. She held the paper higher. "On this map, Mercy Run crosses from basalt ridge to valley floor in less than a quarter mile while rising 17 feet. Water running uphill is either a miracle or a lie. I ain't seen Finch perform miracles." Silas turned his head toward her. Snow melted along his beard and fell to his collar. Finch swung down from his horse. "Careful, Miss Vance." Clara's face did not change. He came closer, holding out another paper with a red seal. "Since you love documents, read this one." He snapped it open. Silas's eyes went to Clara's name. Finch spoke loud enough for the riders, the house, and the whole White Valley. Signed statement from Abel Vance. His niece Clara agreed to enter this ranch under marriage cover gain. Thorne's confidence locate his private maps and report all findings to my office in exchange for forgiveness of family debt. Clara's lips parted. No sound came. Silas took the page. He read it once. The rifle slipped from his hand and struck the porch boards with a dead wooden crack. When he looked at Clara, there was no storm left in his eyes, only a door closing from the inside. Finch left with his writers when the light failed, but he left his paper on Silas's table like a dead rat. Silas stood over it till the fire burned low. Clara did not touch him. She did not beg. She only held Abel Vance's signed lie in both hands and watched the ink blur where melted snow dripped from her hair. My uncle wrote that, she said. I did not. Silas did not look up. I ran from him. His voice came flat. You knew Finch. I knew the seal. You knew enough. The words struck cleaner than any hand. Clara folded the paper once slow and set it down. Silas opened the door. Snow pushed in around his boots. You can take the shed till daylight. Her fingers went to the mended sleeve she still wore. For a moment she seemed to remember it was his coat. She slipped it off and laid it across the chair. Then she walked out without it. The cold met her like iron. The shed smelled of old hay, mouse dust, and frozen leather. Clara sat on an overturned crate till the house lamp went dark. She kept her hands tucked beneath her arms. Her knuckles opened again where the skin had split. Near the black edge of morning, she unbuckled her travel bag. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth and tied with her father's bootlace, lay a brass theodolite. Small, dented, green at one hinge. The last thing he had left her that Abel had not sold. She carried it up the hill above Mercy Run. Snow reached past her knees. Each step punched through crust and sank into powder. Her skirt froze stiff against her legs. Behind her, the ranch house shrank to a square of dark wood below the white slope. At the ridge, wind took the breath from her mouth. Clara set the tripod legs in the snow and pressed them down until they bit rock. Her fingers fumbled with the screws. Brass burned her skin. Twice she dropped the pencil. Once she had to put it between her teeth and pull her glove on with her wrist. The eastern sky turned the color of cold ash. She sighted the first sunline over the basalt notch. Marked it. Checked the creek bend. Marked it. Measured the angle from the ridge stone to the old cottonwood stump by the ditch. Marked it. The numbers came mean and plain. Finch had not made a mistake. He had stolen land by moving lines where most men would never look. Clara's breath smoked over the page. Blood from her cracked thumb left a small crescent beside the true meridian. She wiped it once and kept drawing. Below, Silas woke before he meant to. The fire was out. Her coat was gone from the peg. His coat lay on the chair. The shed door stood open, banging in the wind. He ran. He followed the broken holes her feet had made in the snow, up past the fence, past Mercy Run, past the old survey stone his father had set before Silas was born. He found her on the ridge. The theodolite still faced east. Clara lay beside it, one arm curved over a rolled sheet of paper. Her lips had gone pale. Snow gathered in her hair and along her lashes. Silas dropped to his knees. Clara. Her hand tightened around the map, even with no strength left in it. He pried it loose, careful, as if from a trap. Lines covered the sheet from edge to edge. Angles, bearings, creek fall. The true boundary of Devil's Anvil drawn so clean a judge could not spit on it. At the bottom she had written in a hand gone jagged from cold, Silas Thorne owes no tax on land never lost. His throat worked once. Nothing came out. He wrapped her in his coat, lifted her against his chest, and carried her down to the horse. Then smoke rose beyond the lower pass. Silas turned in the saddle. At the mouth of Devil's Anvil, where the timber bridge crossed the ravine, flame climbed through the snow. The only road to the territorial court was burning. The bridge burned like a warning nailed across the pass. Silas sat his horse in the snow, with Clara held before him, wrapped in his coat, the map tucked inside his shirt, where his own heat could keep the ink from freezing. Down in the ravine, charred beams cracked and dropped into black water. Clara stirred against him. "Court," she breathed. "You're half froze." Her eyes opened a slit. "Then ride faster." Silas looked east. The road was gone. Finch had made certain of that. Then his gaze cut north to the black wall of Devil's Anvil, where a mule trail climbed through stone, so steep even cattle would turn back from it. His hand tightened on the reins. "Hold to me." Clara's fingers caught his vest. Barely. The horse climbed where no road had any right to be. Hooves struck sparks from buried rock. Snow slid under them in loose sheets, hissing down into the canyon. Once the gelding's hind legs went out, and Silas leaned hard into the slope, one arm locked around Clara, the other hauling the reins till leather cut his palm. Below Mercy Run flashed between rocks, thin as a knife. By the time they reached town, the courthouse bell was tolling noon. Silas drove the horse straight up the muddy street. Folks turned from storefronts. A woman dropped a flour sack. Two boys ran after him shouting. The courthouse doors stood open. Inside, Judge Harlan Pike sat high at the bench, white beard yellowed at the mouth from pipe smoke. Finch stood beside a mining company lawyer with a silver watch chain across his belly. A sale ledger lay open. The judge lifted his gavel. Silas kicked the doors wide with one boot. The room snapped silent. Clara slid from the saddle before Silas could stop her. Her knees buckled. He caught her elbow. She took it once, then pulled free and walked to the front with snow melting from her hem. "Your Honor," she said, "that sale rests on a false survey." Finch laughed once. "This woman is under debt contract and of poor standing." Clara set the blood-marked map on the clerk's table. "Then prove me wrong with numbers." No one laughed after that. She took the brass theodolite from Silas's saddlebag and set it beside the map. The old instrument caught the gray window light. "Original section corner sits at the ridge stone north of Mercy Run," she said. Finch's filing moved the meridian west by 42 chains. That makes the creek climb 17 feet before falling into the ditch. Judge Pike leaned forward. "Water don't climb, Mr. Finch." Finch's mouth opened. Clara pointed to the map. "I measured sunline, ridge, angle, creek fall, and distance from the cottonwood stump. His plat steals the valley floor and hides the spring basin beneath it." The mining lawyer's hand left his watch chain. Silas watched the judge's face harden. Clara's voice gained iron. Silas Thorne paid tax on the land he owned. Finch charged him on a lie. Then he used that lie to seize the ranch before the spring could be named. The judge took the false seal from Finch's papers and held it beside Clara's marriage contract. Same broken-wing eagle. Pike struck the bench once, not with the gavel, but with his fist. "Marshal." A big man by the door stepped forward. Finch backed up. "This is an outrage." "No," the judge said. "It's arithmetic." The marshal took Finch by the arm. The mining lawyer shut his ledger with trembling hands. Judge Pike signed one paper, then another. "Thorn land remains Thorn land. All sale proceedings void." Silas did not move. He looked at Clara across the room, and for the first time since she had come through his gate, his face had no wall on it. But outside, after the cheers and handshakes, he turned to fetch the horse and found only the mended coat folded over the saddle. Under it lay a note. "The debt paper brought me here. The truth is done. You owe me nothing." At the end of the street, Clara Vance climbed into the westbound stage and did not look back. Silas read the note once. Then he crushed it in his fist and ran. The stage had already cleared the farrier's shop wheels, cutting brown tracks through thawing mud. 6 passengers leaned stiff in their seats. The driver had his hat low and his lines tight, urging the team toward the west road. Silas swung onto his horse without touching the stirrup. "Hyah!" The gelding shot down the street. Boots struck porch boards as townsfolk came out to watch. Judge Pike stepped through the courthouse doors with his pipe unlit in one hand. Even the marshal stopped dragging Finch toward the jail and turned his head. Silas rode like a man with fire at his back. The stage driver heard the pounding hooves and looked over his shoulder. "Pull up," Silas shouted. The driver did not. Silas drew alongside, reached across the gap, and seized the brake handle. The stage lurched hard. A woman inside cried out. The team reared, then stamped in the mud, blowing steam. Clara appeared at the window. Her face was pale from the cold, and the court, and the thing she had done to herself by leaving. One hand held the curtain. The other held nothing. Silas swung down. The whole street had gone quiet enough to hear harness leather creak. Clara opened the stage door before he reached it. "You won," she said. "No." Her fingers tightened on the doorframe. "Your land is yours." Silas pulled the marriage contract from inside his coat. The paper was worn soft from snow heat and blood. Her name still showed through the stains. "This brought you to my gate," he said. Clara looked at the paper, then at him. He tore it once. The rip sounded sharp in the cold street. He tore it again, until the false seal fell in pieces into the mud. A murmur moved through the crowd. Silas did not look at them. "I don't want a bought wife," he said. Clara's mouth shook once, but she held it closed. He took one step closer. "I don't want a woman bound by debt, or pity, or fear of the next man waiting down the road." The wind pushed loose hair across her cheek. He lifted his hand, stopped short, then let it fall to his side. "I got a house that knew death too long. I got land I near let thieves steal, because I forgot how to stand up before the last nail went in. I got a hearth that don't sound right with only one cup on the table." Clara's eyes filled, but no tear fell. Silas's voice dropped lower. "Devil's Anvil don't need a contract bride. Neither do I." He swallowed hard. "It needs you, Clara Vance. Not as debt, not as shelter. As the one who sees true lines when every lying man draws them crooked." The driver stared ahead, red-faced and silent. Clara stepped down from the stage. Mud took the hem of her dress. She did not seem to notice. "And your heart?" she asked. Silas took off his hat. "That fool thing followed you before I did." For a long breath, Clara only stood there. Then she reached out and laid her palm against the scar on his face. Not beside it, not around it, on it. Silas closed his eyes. When he opened them, she was still there. Weeks later, the valley lay washed clean beneath a gold evening sky. Snow held only in the high cracks of Devil's Anvil. Mercy Run moved bright over stones low and honest, all downhill like water ought. On the porch, Clara leaned against Silas's shoulder with a pencil tucked behind her ear. A new map lay across her lap, this one marked with Fences Springs pasture and one small square named home. Inside, apple pie cooled on the stove. Coffee darkened in the pot. The hearth burned steady, throwing red light across 2 cups on the table. In the pasture, horses grazed slow. Silas looked down at the map. "Line looks true." Clara smiled without lifting her head. "It is now."